What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Coach Rob 619 back with another episode of Believe the Hype. I know it's been a while. I haven't done one of these videos in a long time, and it's about that time. Now, in today's episode of Believe the Hype, I'm taking on a fragrance that, a couple of months ago it was hyped to the max. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was saying, this is a fragrance that you got to get, go buy, blind buy, one of the best fragrances that they smelled, one of the best releases in a while. And so I had to pick it up. I got me a sample, and here goes my sample, Montale's Intense Cafe. And this is I think this was a 10 mil sample. Montale, there you go, Intense Cafe. And I think this was a 10 mil, and as you can see, I use a lot of the juice up. It's pretty much empty. I did a lot of testing on this one, and these, if you were to go buy a bottle, they're gonna run you about, I think, 160 for the 100 ml bottle and around 110 for the 50 ml bottle. So as you can see, these are kind of on the expensive side, not too expensive. I mean, you can find niche way more expensive than that. So I think it's reasonable for the quality of juice you get. And if you guys seen my 5 for 5 video where I mentioned, my favorite houses or in some of the fragrances from those houses, I mentioned Montale. I really do enjoy this house because, in my opinion, you get the quality and you get like great juice that projects like beastly. I was just watching Drag Doc. Shout out to you, Drag Doc. I was just watching Drag Doc's video, and he was saying, I think he was talking about his worst fragrances or fragrances he regret purchasing, and he said, what this would never be one of my complaints, but he said the fragrance lasts too long, and that's why he regrets. Like, it would last for days on his clothes, and like weeks, I guess he was saying something to that effect. And to me, that you getting what you pay for if something's gonna last that long. So that's what I love about the house, and they do it better than any other house that I could think of. People will always tell you how long their fragrances last. So on that, great. You'll never get any complaints from me on that. Now, to get into this Montale, this Intense Cafe, with the name like that, you would assume that obviously it's going to smell like a cafe. Being that I heard a little bit of hype about it, people were saying that it's coffee, great coffee note. So I was assuming more like a Starbucks cafe or a Coffee Bean. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Coffee Bean, but that's another like chain, just like Starbucks. They sell coffee. And when I think of Starbucks, there's a smell that I associate with coffee or cafe, or if you're going into like a grocery store and you go in that aisle with the coffee, sometimes you may have a grocery store with a coffee machine. They're grinding the coffee and the beans. And the cafes, there's a type of scent that I associate with coffee, and I mean, coffee that's made. So I associate cream, sugar, whipped cream, caramel, like a sweet, like a frappuccino, I guess you would call it, type of scent. Now, in this Intense Cafe, it's not like that. Now, explain what I mean. Let me just jump right into it. Intense Cafe, you're going to get primarily three notes. You're going to get coffee, obviously. You're going to get rose, and you're going to get vanilla and chocolate. You're going to get chocolate. And there's a ton of fragrances that are very similar to this. One being Tom Ford's Noir de Noir. So if you guys are familiar with Tom Ford, or you're familiar with that Noir de Noir fragrance, you've pretty much smelt this already, and you might prefer that to it. Now, this fragrance, it made me realize a couple of things. One being that I do not like the note coffee. I do not like the note of chocolate. And I kind of knew that, but this kind of just hit home with me. It kind of really solidified that those are notes that I don't like, because pretty much all the fragrances that I smell with those notes in it, I don't really care for. Now, not to take anything away from this one, if you like coffee, if you like vanilla, if you like rose, chocolate, you're probably going to love this, because it does project. People will recognize it. People will smell it, and then people that also like those notes around you will like this. So for you guys may enjoy it. Now, for me personally, my opinion on this, to start off with the first note that you get, and I sprayed some on earlier. Okay, to start off with the first note that you get, coffee. Now, it's not the coffee that I was talking about earlier. It's not the Starbucks cafe coffee. This is coffee bean. So, and there's a difference. This reminds me of, if you see my last Believe the Hype on New Harlem, Bonds New Harlem, this reminds me of the same coffee bean that fragrance like. And that was one of the main notes that turned me off from New Harlem. It's the same exact note that's turning me off from this. And we've all smelt that coffee bean. Like I mentioned in that video, that coffee bean is the bean that you smell when you're in any fragrance store, Sephora, Bloomingdale's, Macy, Nordstrom's, wherever they have the little coffee beans you can smell to reset your nose after you've been smelling a ton of fragrances. You're smelling everything and everything is starting to smell the same to you. You know, you smell a little coffee bean and you're reset and you can go on to the next fragrance. That's what they captured in this. They captured that coffee bean. And that coffee bean is kind of, it has like a stench to it that I just don't like, that I don't find pleasant. Now you take that coffee bean and you combine that with dark chocolate, not milk chocolate, white chocolate, no, not a real sweet chocolate. Now this has a ton of sweetness to it, but it's more like an artificial sweetener versus real, sappy sweet. You add that dark chocolate, and that's another note. Like I said, I don't like dark chocolate. Every fragrance that has the note of chocolate, like dark chocolate, I don't like the way dark chocolate tastes, and I definitely don't like the way it smells. So this is two for two with me, and I'm just not agreeing with it. And the chocolate, what I notice about chocolate fragrances, to me, they don't, in my opinion, they don't capture the note of chocolate accurately. It almost cheapens up the fragrance, because that's the same way I felt about Noir de Noir. Now, don't get me wrong. If an average person walked past you, average nose, and they smelt it, they'll probably associate chocolate. They're not going to critique it and say, you know what, that don't smell like a Hershey chocolate bar. As a reviewer and as a person that's into fragrances, like most of us people that's watching this and me, we're a little bit more judgmental. And when I smell this chocolate in this, or any note, we kind of can reference something else that we smelled, that their interpretation of that note was much more true to life. And that's kind of how I feel with chocolate. I've smelled better, and if I reference it to real chocolate, it kind of smells cheap. And some of you guys are too young to even know this, but when I was in, like, back in the day when I was in middle school, I think it was, or elementary school, we used to have these things like scented pencils, scented erasers, like scented, like they're like square erasers. Some were like the form of a strawberry or a grape or something like that, and they had a scent, like you could smell them. Well, I had a chocolate one. I think I had a chocolate pencil or a chocolate eraser, and it gave off that, that artificial scent of chocolate. That's what this reminds me of. It reminds me of those old little erasers I had in middle school or elementary school that smelled like chocolate. And that's why it may personally turn me off, because it just smells so, like, to me, generic and fake. It reminds me of them damn chocolate erasers. Some of you are probably too young to even experience that. But anyway, that's what it reminds me of. So I have that coffee bean note I don't like. That smells like the tester, like the reset your nose coffee beans. Like, it's true to form. It smells like those, but it's not pleasant to me. It has the artificial chocolate scent that I don't agree with. And then it has rose. Now this scent I have, or that note of rose, I have a love and hate relationship with. There's a couple fragrances that do it well, like Le Labo's Rose 31, that Declaration Un Sor, I'm not pronouncing it right, by Cartier. They do it great. And what I notice is I don't like a real true to life rose. I like kind of a synthetic rose, more of a masculine rose in my opinion. And but this one has a true to form rose, and it's almost on a feminine side, so it's somewhat feminine which I'm not really digging too much. And then it has that sweetness, that vanilla in the background. So that pretty much sums up this whole fragrance. You got your coffee bean, your chocolate, your vanilla, and the rose. Now, like I said, if you like those notes, you will probably enjoy this. But for me, a combination of all of those, and some of them not done that well in my opinion, um, this Intense Cafe does not do the trick for me. I think for those that do love those notes, you would find this pretty good. But for me, it's it's so. I rather get I think it's called Outliers. I'm not pronouncing that right either, but Rose Anonyme. That's another chocolate rose kind of scent that's similar to this that I think does it much better. And and now I don't really hear too much hype about this one. And usually that's another thing. When it comes to fragrance that were being hyped for a while, usually the hype is consistent. Like for instance, if you take a vintage for example, that was hyped up, but if you're still seeing people talk about a vintage. If you was to bring it up, people will still be like, you know, yeah, vintage is great. The hype is consistent. It doesn't fall off a cliff. Like I just did a video the other day when I asked people if you had to start over, what fragrance would you pick? And you'll hear people saying, you know what, I got a lot of stuff, but if I had to start over today, a vintage. So or DHI are those hyped up ones, and the hype is still there. You know what I mean? And with this one, it was hyped up for about 2 months and then it fell off a cliff. I don't hear anybody talking about it. I don't hear any new people saying, you know what, I just discovered it or I just smelt it. That Intense Cafe, you got to get it. Kind of fell off a cliff. And there's a lot of fragrances that came around like that. They were hyped up, then you don't hear about them. So that's one way to know, you know, on your own. If you're seeing something hyped up and everybody's talking about it, and a month later it's a ghost town, there's tumbleweeds, and nobody's even mentioning it no more. Most likely it was kind of over, you know, exaggerated. It didn't really live up to the hype. But this one, my final verdict, don't believe the hype. Good fragrance, maybe even great for those that like the notes that I talked about. But to run out and blind buy this one because you've heard the hype about it, I would not recommend. This is something that you must smell yourself because I can see a lot of people buying in the hype and getting disappointed. So these are one of those fragrances you got to kind of be, you know, experienced in the game and exactly know your note breakdown, meaning know exactly that, you know, that pyramid of notes that you like, that your body agrees with, that your skin chemistry agrees with, and you know your climate where you live at, because you know where I live at in San Diego, even if I love this, I wouldn't get a lot of wear out of it because to me this is more of a winter scent, meaning cold weather, and I live in Southern California where it's always hot. This just doesn't this doesn't mix with my climate. On top of me really just not liking it. But anyway, guys, that's my episode of Believe the Hype. I got another one coming. It seems like you guys love these Believe the Hype videos, so I'm gonna try to, you know, be more frequent with them than I normally was. I got another one coming, which is currently being hyped right now, so I want to get that video out before the hype dies down. But until next time, fellas, depending on what the ladies say, determines what I spray. Peace.